Greetings, everybody. Hi, Pastor. It's good to hear from you all. And let me just start off by saying how Janis and I really, truly appreciate your prayers, your love, your support for us. And we're so grateful, really, for you standing with us all these years. It's just wonderful. Well, it's my honor and my privilege to share with you, as I was asked, a little bit about myself. First of all, a little bit of personal history here. I'm originally from New York City, so if you see or hear my accent a little weird, well, that's why. It's funny, some people say, oh, you sound foreign at times when I'm preaching or teaching. And I say, well, it's my Brooklynese. And they go, oh, well, where's that? How far is that? Where's that? All right, well, I'm from New York City. I've been learning how to talk a little bit slower and pronouncing my R's, which is important. But anyway, I got saved in 1974. I came down from New York to Florida, and the Lord has seen fit to me to meet some Christians, and they took me to a Bible study, and I heard the gospel for the first time, and I trusted the Lord at that time, and it was great. And my desire was that I really wanted to learn and to see what it was all about. And so I really was all excited. I should mention I was a musician in New York. I mean, I say musician, sounds fancy, but I was kind of the Woodstock era. We all had a band, a rock band, and we played in the basements and the garages and things like that. And I came to Florida to see if I could put a group together, something with a new sound. But the Lord had other plans. I came to know the Lord, and I never went back to New York, and I was afraid to talk to my friends because, I became a Christian. But as I grew and got to learn what it was all about, I did eventually go back and witness to my friends, and we all grew up together, and they came to know the Lord, and it was good. One of my dearest friends, my guitarist, he recently passed away through COVID, that COVID problem that we had, and that was very sad. But nevertheless, I stayed here and I met Janis, and we got married in 1976, and so we've been together all this time. Together we felt the call to go into Jewish ministry. We met some Jewish believers. I knew Jewish folks. In New York, you always, but I never thought of them believing in Jesus. It was just kind of a strange thing. I said, Jews don't believe in Jesus. But at the church that we were attending, there were some Jewish believers, and they were wearing those Star of David with the cross in the middle. And boy, that really caught my attention, and I inquired, well, who are you guys? And they gave me the riot act. They said, didn't you know Jesus was Jewish and the Bible was Jewish, in a very Jewish fashion. I'm used to that kind of bluntness from the Jewish community because I throw it myself at people, at them, I should say. But nevertheless, we felt the call to go into Jewish evangelism. My interest has always been in history and knowing what it looked like and what it was like, and reading the Bible. I know it was all, a lot of history there, along with the wonderful work that God has so fit to put in the gospel, in the Bible, for us to know and learn. So we went to a ministry in Chicago in '77, and this ministry that we were at, it's one of the oldest in the States, and they had a policy at that time that all new incomers had to go through I say basic training, but studies in Jewish evangelism. So I attended Moody Bible Institute, went to the Jewish Studies program there. And then because I had some Bible training when Janis and I were attending a church here in Miami, and they had like a Bible school, evening school kind of a thing, and I submitted the courses that I took, and so the mission board said, hey, you already got some Bible training. Would you be willing to go to a rabbinical school? And I go, what? One of those rabbinics with the Jewish guys? they said, yeah. I said, okay, I did. So I grew a beard, and I went in there, and they were very friendly toward me. They knew, some of them knew I wasn't a Jewish man, a Jewish individual, but they really appreciated that I was there, willing to hear their point of view and from their perspective. and I grew, and I learned a lot. And the 8 years that I was in Chicago, I attended off and on to that school, and just learned so much where they're coming. Because Jewish evangelism is a cross-cultural work. There are things that we need to be familiar with in order so that we don't offend, and then also that we communicate properly. You don't want to use terminologies and phrases that they don't understand. And so I was trained from what they knew and how they understood the scripture, and I was able to apply that in my training and in my witnessing experiences with the Jewish people. So we were in Chicago from 1977 to 1985, I believe. And then from there, we came with the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry, the mission board that we're with right now. And they needed a person here in Florida. I remember the director at the time, he said, you're going to be coming here to Florida, and you're going to be dealing with a lot of the elderly folks. Here in Florida, a lot of the Jewish folks have been abandoned by family members up north. They just kind of bring them down here, and they put them in some nursing home or some place where they're, and they never hear from their family again. So one of the things that I was instructed was that you're going to have to be real slow and patient with them. Well, when I was in Chicago, I had the privilege of attending a sort of like a pastoral internship program. I was the only one of the mission board that they gave me that special dispensation. At the time, I didn't know why, but I did know that I was going to be working with churches, and I love the church, and I love pastors, and I know the ministry that's involved there. So I wanted to know what it's all about. It was primarily how to plant churches and and understanding the different programs and so on. But you know what I did learn? When I came to Florida, and I'm being told that I'm going to be dealing with a lot of elderly people, and so that the ministry that I have here is very pastoral. I have to take time. It's not that real fast, gun-ho type of a ministry. It takes time. You build relationships. You become a good hearer. And then when I'm teaching, I got to be very easy, not bringing out all those theological heavy terms that we could do that. But the Jewish folks say, what are you talking about? Why don't you just be a little more simple? Simple. So it's a very pastoral work. Janis and I both take time to visit people and see them and just be with them. And so the Lord knew, what I needed in my training, and that's why we're here in Florida. And we've been here, like I said, since 1985. And we're still growing, still learning, a lot of opportunities that is availing itself. My training, as I mentioned, I went to Moody Bible Institute. I went to a rabbinical school. I also took some courses over in Israel at the Institute of Holy Land Studies. I think they call themselves now Jerusalem University or something, but it was basically a geography course of the sites and places that you read in the Bible. We traveled everywhere. We had maps, and we had to prepare these maps before we went, and going to the sites and then reading the text. A lot of it was of the Old Testament, the battles, with Joshua and all the Philistines and the Israelites at the different sites. That was good, because I'm a history buff. I really like history, so that was really good. And then with Friends of Israel, I have the opportunity to write. I'm one of the writers for the IMG, the Israel My Glory, and that's really good. I can write, and people won't know that I'm that I'm from Brooklyn. So they go, "Oh, this guy writes pretty good." Anyway, but it's an honor. It's a real privilege. There's no pressure. They told me that we have a prescription of in the thousands, and then the readership, because we give them out, and we're in every continent. The magazine goes to every continent, so it's over 1 million people that read the article. So when you're staring at a blank screen, it could be intimidating a little bit, but that's why I always cover your prayers along with all the other requests that we put down in our Cologne reports and ministries and things of that nature here. One of the things that kind of highlights that Janis and I got involved with is that some of my presentations are, I put it into a movie form. I had produced a movie called Ross Valley, From the Synagogue to the Savior. It's a story of a Jewish surgeon during the American Civil War, how he was confronted with the gospel and treating a wounded young man, and how the boy testified of his faith in Christ, and the doctor, heard it, listened to it, and then later, about 10 years later, he came to know the Lord. And so it was a really exciting story. And I've told the story many a times. I even portrayed it in churches, doing his testimony in first person. And then it's now on film. It's in a DVD that it's available through the mission. And so, that's something that was, quite a challenge in terms of how to put it all together. I was an extra in some of the movies, the Civil War movies that was made, like Glory and some others. And when you go to these various Civil War sites, they'll have like an interpreter center, and they'll show you a little bit of the reenactment of the battle, what took place there. And people have said, I've seen you. But I always say, I'm in the cast of thousands. How can you tell? I mean, but nevertheless, and I've used it as a testimony as well, sharing it with young people, and, so, oh, you're a movie star. I say, yeah, I'm a movie star. Yeah, sure. But that's, it's a ministry, and we've seen people come to know the Lord as people have seen it, and they have shared the testimony and as such. But I bring that up because it was during that time that, in the filming, because I went local, went to Gettysburg and went to, various sites and took pictures of filming at the reenactments. I was portraying a surgeon, so I had to do a lot of research as to the medicine at that time and that sort of a thing. The mission sent out a memo, and they wanted to get everybody to have a physical, just make sure, see how everybody's doing. And so I, after the filming, and that was, the easy part, filming. The hard part was when you have to start editing and putting it all together. That was to follow. But having come back from Gettysburg, filming the big battle scenes there and everything that went on, I went to the doctor, and it was 2006, the end of 2006, and there the doctor said, I was fine, but he said there was something that he noticed, that I was chronic anemic. And he mentioned, he says, have you noticed if you've been tired lately? And then I wondered, should I tell him where I've just been? I just fought a war, a battle. Gettysburg. So I said, doctor, I told him what I was doing. He kind of smiled, and he said, you should have been carried off the field as a wounded, because he showed me the numbers. He says, people don't even get out of bed. They can't even walk. I mean, and you, what did you do? I said, well, I was running all over the place, just, with the camera crew, and then my role portraying the doctor and running back and forth, and all the midst of the smoke and the battle and everything that was going on. And so the doctor said, well, let's see what we can do. So it was a series of B12 shots, B12 nasal sprays, B12 pills, B12, I mean, you name it. If I was normal, I would have been able to leap tall buildings with a single bound. I mean, it would have been so hyper, but it was normal, it was fine. When I saw him, he always said, you're still losing blood, with the labs that he was putting me through. You're losing blood. And I said, Doc, you keep saying that, but I look at the floor and I don't see a puddle. What do you mean I'm losing blood? Where's it going? He laughed. He goes, no, it doesn't work that way, but your numbers are not looking good. And so I went to all kinds of specialists. And eventually there was one doctor who was not only a hematologist, but also an oncologist. And he then extracted some bone marrow out of me. And then he says, there, I found what your problem is. And he called it multiple myeloma. And I didn't know I never heard of it. He says it's a low-grade form of leukemia. Well, when he said leukemia, then I know, oh, what? What, me? Yeah. And that really, got me all stirred up. And he says, well, since you don't have any symptoms other than you're just showing that you're chronic anemic, which is one of the signs that myeloma, attacks, what it does. He says, let's go at it real hard. And I said, yeah, let's do it real hard. I did wonder, as I left the office, that maybe he got the wrong file. Maybe he got someone else's file, and he's got the myeloma, and I don't. He's got mine, and so, I mean, I was just going a little crazy. Me? Myeloma is cancer. Okay, it is a cancer. It's in the plasma, and it affects the cells there, and it was crowding out my red cells. That's why I was showing that I was chronic anemic. But I wasn't in any stage. So, in 2007, I underwent a stem cell transplant. It was my own cells they extracted, put me in a hospital, gave me a massive dose of chemo, and then they reinserted my cells back into me. It's sort of like they rebooted me up. When you have some kind of problem with your computer, and you take it in and you got some viruses or something in there, and they said, well, we'll just have to clean it all out, and then we'll, recharge, bring everything in. And that's basically what they did to me. It worked. It worked. But I still have to see the doctor because it's not a cure per se. It's a treatment. So I've been on the treatment for many years here, even presently right now. Right now I'm just taking one pill, one for 3 weeks, and then I take a week off, and then I start all over again. One pill, one for each, week. And then then I'll go see the doctor, and he'll look at the labs, and he'll see if it's effective. If that's not working, there's another alternative. If that's not working, there's so many things that can come down the pike here if things stop, working as such. But anyway, nevertheless, it's just something that has happened. It's just the way it is. But the Lord has seen fit that I was able to use that as a ministry. My colleagues at the Friends of Israel, one of the dear friends there, sent me an article, and it said, "Don't waste your cancer. Don't waste your cancer." What is that all about? And I read it, and it basically is that the Lord knew this would happen, and it was His will, and that's fine. But I used it as a ministry. Now I'll say this. We're dealing with Jewish folks, older folks for the most part, and they think the world of Janis and I. They think we're perfect. Oh my goodness, our kids are perfect, and we're perfect. We look good, we're healthy, and everything else, and all this, and so when I talk about sin, we're all sinners. They never include us. You guys talk to God all the time. God knows your names. It's wonderful. But when I told them that I had cancer, they stared at me. They couldn't believe it. And of course, Jewish humor being what it is, they said, "What did you do that God got angry with you? That gave you cancer?" I go, no. Let me tell you what's happening here. We're all frail. We're all sinners. And it opened the door. Now they were willing to hear, that. Hey, how we appear it's that God, through Jesus Christ, the Messiah, what He did at Calvary's cross, and dying for our sins, and then being buried, and then rising again, and then giving the gift of eternal life, whoever would believe it. Now they're listening because, hey, I got a problem too. So I took it as a ministry. I'm not going to waste my cancer. I'm going to utilize it wherever I can. When it's appropriate. Of course, I don't just bring it up all the time, but when it's valid that I think I can share that. Janis and I, we just had a Jewish man, just maybe about a couple of weeks back. He kept complaining, that he's got aches and pains and all those problems. His daughter is a Jewish believer, but, and he's been witness to, but he said, Jews don't believe in Jesus, and, on and on, the typical, arguments that they raise. But then I told him, I said, hey, he said he thought the world of me. His daughter, told me that when she talked to him. And I told him when I was talking to him, I said, I have cancer. And again, he stopped, looked at me, and stared. And you? I said, I have cancer. And I'm frail. I have to, adjust myself in many things that I have to do, like things that I can't do, that I used to do. And he was silent. And then he eventually said that, I'm afraid to die. And then I used that as an opportunity that the Lord opened that door for me. And I shared the gospel with him. And Janis was with me alongside praying. and he prayed to receive the Lord. So, hey, I mean, whether I'm sick or not, it doesn't matter. God can still use us, no matter what frailties may befall us at any time. Now, I want to share a testimony, if I may. Pastor, thank you for the privilege here. I'm going to draw your attention to the book of Psalms, Psalms 142. 142. Now, I shared this with my doctor friend, the one who kind of discovered that I had a problem. He's my primary doctor, and I shared with him that I said, you're the one that kind of insisted that I go through all these tests and to find what my problem was. And so I shared with him, and he kind of smiled and laughed, because I look at Psalm 142 as a testimony of what I have been going through. And then perhaps, and I've shared this with others too, and I've even preached on it, and perhaps maybe someone, one of you guys can benefit by it as well. This is a psalm that David wrote when he entered one of the caves as he was hiding from King Saul. And it was one of the caves that I had in the area when I was in Israel that I entered. I don't know. I don't like caves. People like to go sightseeing. They go into caves and things. But I went into one of the caves there, and it was dark. It was dreary. It was depressing. And I could appreciate, David singing the blues, so to speak, and his having to run away from Saul, had to hide and all that. But on this one occasion, he's in a cave, and I started to relate my experience having, with my myeloma. So let me just very quickly share a few thoughts here with us here. Okay, verses 1, 2, and 3. I look at this as a period when I started to look within myself. When I was first told that I had, myeloma, I started looking within myself, and then I read what David said. David said, I cried unto the Lord with my voice unto the Lord did I make my supplication. Oh yeah. I cried. I said, oh Lord, what am I going to do? Is it over for me? I mean, no more? I'm not going to be able to do anything anymore? I poured out my complaint before him. I showed before him my trouble. With my spirit, when my spirit was overwhelmed within me. Yeah, I was, in bad shape. I didn't know, what I could do. I was just kind of moping around the house. I told Janis about it, and, she was, aware of it as well, and she was very sympathetic and loving. But, hey, I started feeling sorry for myself. Yeah, I said, how could this be happening to me? I felt that way. So I was looking within myself. But then in verse 4, notice what David did, and I did the same thing. He looked around. I did. I started looking around, talking to people. Maybe they can give me some kind of word of encouragement or some good news or something. Oh, it's not that bad, kind of thing. And verse 4 says, I looked on my right hand and beheld, but there was no man that would know me. Refuge failed me. No man cared for my soul. No man cared for my soul. I did call the doctor, the primary doctor, after I saw the specialist, and he told me what I had. And I was reluctant to say anything, hard, but I said, hey, he told me that I have cancer. I got multiple myeloma. And he goes, oh, Peter, I'm so sorry to hear about that. Oh, well, and he's a good man. He'll take care of you. And I came very close. You know what I came very close to saying? Well, Doc, give me a pill. Isn't there a pill you can give me so I can get over with this thing? I've got no time for this. I didn't say it. But in my mind, I was thinking that, And then when I hung up, I said, he's nice, but I don't think he really cares about me. He's got so many other patients. And then I talked to people here and there, and they were all very polite and very sympathetic, but they really weren't giving me any really encouragement in any kind of sense, because everybody has some issue. So I started, looking from within, woe is me, and then I started looking around to find some kind of something to hold on to, somebody, and like David felt, there was nobody. Nobody cared for my soul, he said. Nobody cared. That's how I felt. But then, as time went on, verse 5 and 6, I started to learn, I started to look up. I said, wait a minute, all these years. Yeah, I got convicted with one of my pastor friends said to me, he said, hey, have you ever preached on these topics? And he gave me, the passage from scriptures, I go, yeah, I've taught that, I preached on it. He goes, did you believe it? Oh man, did you believe it? Yeah, I know you preach to tell the people, that this is how they should be thinking and that's what they should. But do you believe it? And I came under conviction. I said, yeah, oh man, yeah, I do, but then I realized, what am I complaining about? I mean, why is this? So I started to look up. I started finally to look up, and this is what David did. In verses 5 and 6, he says, I cried unto thee, Lord. You see, I cried unto thee, O Lord. I said, thou art my refuge and my portion in the land of the living. Attend unto my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. Well, David, of course, is fleeing those who hate him, like King Saul and others. But my persecution was the disease, that was plaguing me physically. But I started to look up. I said, Lord, this is your will, then so be it. Strengthen me in any way you can so I can continue doing for as long as you want me to do it. I had a whole change of attitude, a whole change of mindset. It really was something. So I went from looking within myself, and then I went from looking around, trying to find something to stabilize me, to finally looking up. And I really started to feel a whole lot better. The disease was still there, and it was doing what it does, but I realized, hey, I'm not alone. For the Lord is truly my refuge. He really is. But it's that last verse. This is the one that really was the clincher. This is what David said. Bring my soul out of prison, that I may praise thy name. The righteous shall compass me about, for thou shalt deal bountifully with me. I was teaching at a Bible school, and this was after I spent some time in the hospital. I was, away. When I finally came, people were very happy to see me, and I felt good. But the wife of the pastor who was there, she was very friendly, very nice, and she was happy to see me, and she says, so Peter, this is great. Tell me, where have you been? Because, I've been to Israel, I've been to all these places, I've done archaeological work in there, I was, found things, did things, I did some exciting things, as some people said that, that I was involved with. And I was very silent. And she kept probing me a little bit. She says, have you been traveling here and there? And I said, well, have you been going to the reenactment? I hemmed and hawed. And she paused and she stared at me. She goes, are you trusting God? Are you afraid to leave your comfort zone? You know what my comfort zone was? The hospital that I was in and the doctors that I had been seeing. I didn't want to go too far. I wanted to be around them. Oh, in case something should happen. I can't be. I wanted them around. He says, you're not trusting God. Anywhere you go, it doesn't matter. I started thinking, and I said, I am. That's like what David said. I was in a prison. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to stay kind of local. She says, venture out. As the Lord opens opportunities for you, go for it. I really came under conviction, and I love her dearly for that. She's now home with the Lord. But that last verse, because what did he do? What did David do? He looked ahead. You see, he looked ahead, and that's what I started to do. I started to look ahead. Okay, let me go and do what I have to do, no matter where I have to do it, because I'm in the Lord's hands. So I share that Psalm 142. It's a personal testimony of my experience, and perhaps maybe for you, what David experienced. But hey, we all sometimes find ourselves in a cave, even though we don't go to a literal cave, but we're in a cave sometimes. Well, anyway, I wanted to share that with you, and I'm so grateful that I can do that. I don't do it often because, I don't want to just keep talking about my illnesses and stuff like that, but sometimes some people, some church, some pastors would ask us, can you share, briefly a little bit, about what you are going through? And the old joke, if you're preaching and people fall asleep, I always bring the ram's horn, the shofar. And I jokingly said, now if anybody sleeps, you know what this is for? I'll blow. They all start laughing on that. But whenever I talk about my experience with multiple myeloma, I can guarantee nobody's sleeping, because everybody, either them personally or somebody they know or a loved one, they all know that this is a scourge. This is really a human scourge that is this. And people want to know. They want to know how to deal with this. And if they know the Lord, they truly appreciate what the Word of God has to say under those conditions and things. So I often would share my testimony using Psalm 142. I'm still doing some reenactments, not too much dressing up, but I do the biblical feasts, like the Passover, Feast of Tabernacles, and some of these other presentations. There is a special YouTube program that the Friends of Israel had designed for me. It's called the Scholar Series. But what I do is I get to share some of the many lessons that I have taught through the years from a Jewish perspective. And I give a lecture, and I just record it on my laptop here, and then they post it, and people all over the world see it. And so that's quite something. So I've been posting it there. I just posted the Sermon on the Mount, and now I'm working on the Essentials in the Life of Christ, and I'll be doing that in different parts and segments, because it could be very long. So that's the latest thing. So look that up, and as you see it, I trust that it'll be a source of blessing to you. Well, listen, Lord blessings to you guys. Let me say farewell, shalom, which means peace, and I look forward to seeing you again. And thank you for this honor and for this privilege of allowing me to share my heart with you. Shalom, shalom.